Laura, welcome to the podcast. Thank you ever so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
It's nice to see you again. It's been a little while. We did do
It
some
has
work
been a very
together
long time.
quite a while ago, and it's nice to kind of catch up again
Mm,
and see how things are going because I think things have changed a lot and things we've kind of gone in the directions that we've gone in.
yeah.
But it's really nice to catch up with you again because I know you're doing some amazing stuff. Laura, tell us a bit about who you are and what it is you do. What are you up to at the moment? What is it you do?
Okay, so I'm the founder of PAST, which is Positive Assessment Support and Training. So in PAST we do all of those things. So I work as part of a multidisciplinary team doing assessments for young people, and we assess for autism, ADHD, and then within that we also look at demand avoidance as well. Um, I do lots of consults with parents who are maybe sort of struggling with any aspect of parenting a neurodivergent child. So they might suspect their child is neurodivergent and just need some guidance on sort of what to do next. Their child might have a diagnosis, they might be struggling with behavior, they might be struggling with um, aspects of their child's education. It could be anything really. And then I do lots of training in schools and colleges. Um, I also am one of the directors of an organisation called Kite, and Kite provide bespoke AOTAS packages for children and young people that can't access school or college, basically. So they have these very bespoke programs. And we've got over 60 children and young people now that we're supporting through Kite. And almost all of those young people are autistic with a PDA or a demand avoidant profile. And then I've written some books on PDA. I've written a book on ADHD. Yeah, so
So not much then.
just a few things. Just a few
That's
things. Keep
super
me quiet.
busy. But on top of that as well, I think I've spotted you're doing a radio show.
I am doing a radio show. I'm doing a radio show with my lovely brother. So my youngest brother was diagnosed with ADHD this year. And he won't mind me talking about this because he's been very open about it himself. But my brother last year had a really serious mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And he's battled addiction for a number well for many years from when he was a teenager really. And he's been clean and sober for 6 years, which is amazing.
Brilliant.
Um, but clearly what happened last summer was a build-up of years of undiagnosed ADHD, masking, just having to work so hard just to kind of fit into a neurotypical world without people really fully understanding him. Um, and we've always been very close, and I was very much sort of supporting him a lot last year, and I really started reaching out and like looking at what was available for people like my brother, like a young man in his 40s. Um, and there really wasn't very much that I
Mm.
felt was really relevant to him, in terms of like not even counseling or therapy, but just a sort of space where people would really get it. So we decided to start doing this radio show, um, where we're basically talking about all those issues. So we're very much talking about late diagnosed and late identified neurodiversity, but also we're looking at the kind of strengths that come from being neurodivergent, but also really looking at the challenges, particularly around things like mental health and
Yeah.
addiction. So yeah, no, it's great, and I'm so proud of him. We've literally had a meeting this morning planning the next shows, and what we're actually creating is like a website that's going to be a hub where people will kind of land on this website, hopefully, and there's going to be all different neurodivergent people on there that can help with, if you need a counselor, we're hoping to get a bank of counsellors, but if you want someone that, we've got people in there who do ADHD for people who are neurodivergent, sorry, yoga for people that are neurodivergent, mindfulness stuff. We've got a lady that we've been speaking to who's a nurse practitioner who's actually really clued up, not just on medication for ADHD, but also alternatives to
Yeah.
medication.
Yeah.
So I think what we're hoping to build is this really useful kind of almost like a directory of support, um, and the radio show as well, which has been really, with the guests we've had so far, have been amazing.
How cool. Brilliant. Okay.
Especially, would you like to be a guest on our radio
I would
show?
love, oh,
There we
Laura,
go. There you go. I
I
think
would
you'd be a
love to be a
brilliant
guest on
guest.
your radio.
Okay,
I've never
brilliant.
been in a radio show before.
There you go. You see, come
Oh,
on our radio show.
I would love to. It's so important that, isn't it? I think to be able to get the support that is specific for
Yeah,
neurodivergent people, because actually
yeah.
it does need to be adjusted. It can't just be off the peg, a bit of CBT here, a bit of that, a bit,
No,
because it's so complex. And I think, I've been looking at burnout, particularly in parents that are in neurodivergent families, whether they know they or suspect they could be neurodivergent themselves, or, but actually it's finding that support that is really specific to
yeah.
neurodivergent brains.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also what's really, really important as a neurodivergent person is that you have to feel a connection with the person that you're
Yeah,
like, talking to and sharing stuff with. And I think you've got to find somebody that you've got that really authentic connection with.
yeah.
And yeah, that was something that I was really struggling to find for my brother last year. Like,
Mm,
I was looking on counselling directories and just wasn't anyone that I thought, this isn't this there wasn't anyone that was quite right. So yeah,
mm,
I think
mm.
it does have to be, it does have to be the right person and the right approach as well.
Yeah. The question that I ask everyone when they first come on, Laura, onto the podcast is, Laura, are you the perfect parent?
No, because there's no such thing as the
Oh, you
perfect
couldn't have said it
parent.
better. Yeah.
There's no such thing. And I've been working with parents now as in my role as past for 13 years, but prior to that I worked in education,
Yeah.
started teaching 24 years ago. So I would regularly have meetings with parents that were really, really struggling. And I've always said I would be I get paid to basically support other parents, but I would be a liar if I sat here and said that I was the perfect parent. And there is no such thing as the perfect parent. There really, really isn't.
Mm.
Um, I think parenting is so dynamic as well. Like you're constantly changing your parenting, aren't you? Because your children are constantly changing, your children's needs are constantly changing. So you're constantly adapting, and changing. And I think also there's so many sort of facets to parenting as well, isn't there? There's obviously the way that you were
Yeah.
parented. There's your own, I mean, it's really interesting what you're talking about with like burnout in parents, because there are times I know in my life where my tolerance as a parent has been massively reduced because of my own needs and my own mental health. Um, but I would say that I can say without being embarrassed that I think I'm a good parent. And I've got a fantastic relationship with both of my children,
Mm.
but it's never been perfect,
Mm. I think
ever.
what's really interesting is that just before we kind of came on to record, I was saying to Laura that I've bought her book. So you've got
Mm.
your book, and I'm going to read it because I'll get the words around the wrong way otherwise, Laura. So it's The Slightly Distracted Woman's Guide to Living with an ADHD, with an adult ADHD diagnosis. And I was saying to Laura, I don't buy books because I don't read them. I just think there's no point. But I'd
Mm.
had a look online when I knew Laura was going to come on the podcast, and I thought I'll just have a look and see what's in it. And there were some little bits, and I thought, oh, I'm going to go and read those bits because they're really interesting. And you've written it in a way that it's so easy to access. So even as a dyslexic person, for me,
Mm.
I could just dip in and out of it. It was easy to read. It was broken up into nice little chunks. There was bits in there about the things other parents, I presume, had
Yeah.
said, the people had said. Um,
Mm.
and then the little bit that I loved as well at the end of each section was something to write down because
Yeah.
I really upset people with books. I fold corners, I write on them, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, there's an actual page for me to
You're
write.
allowed to write in this book. You're
Yeah.
allowed to.
And I think what was really interesting is in your book, you talk about parenting and you're really
Mm.
honest and open about the
Mm.
kind of the route you went on with your parenting. And this was pre-diagnosis for you. So
Mm.
you're diagnosed ADHD.
Yeah.
How do you prefer to refer to it, Laura? Because I say that I am dyslexic. Other people say they
I'd say I've got ADHD.
you've got ADHD. I just
Yeah.
like to check.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I know you have to be careful. Look, you
yeah,
have to be careful with language, but I'm fine.
yeah,
I'm ADHD or I've got ADHD. It doesn't
yeah.
bother me.
Doesn't worry. Great. Okay. But what was really interesting there was was reading how for you not knowing that you were
Mm.
ADHD and the impact that had on your parenting. What was that like for you? Kind of those early days and
Well, I think,
parenting.
yeah, the first thing, and I talk about this in the book, is that the one thing I always knew I wanted to be was a mum. I mean,
Yeah.
from even as a little girl, I was always playing with dolls. I just was desperate. I used to beg my mum to have another baby because I just wanted to have something to look after. Um, but I also entered becoming a mum with a huge amount of anxiety because I've had so many things in my life that I valued that I've lost or broken or damaged, because I'm ADHD, I'm forgetful and I'm clumsy. And I'm writing the book about how my first dog I got when he was a puppy, he got really badly hurt because I wasn't paying close enough attention to him when we were down, you know, at the horses. So I kind of constantly had this fear and this anxiety as a parent that I was going to do something or not to do something that was meant that my children weren't going to be safe. So I had this sort of permanent feeling of dread and like anxiety that something was going to go wrong. Um, I also very definitely had postnatal depression with both of my children, but I hid it really, really, really well, because I was ashamed that I had postnatal depression, and I remember like the health visitor being very concerned about me
Mm.
because I was very tearful, and particularly my second son did not sleep and did not settle, and I remember feeling absolutely kind of just desperate. And then she said to me, I'm quite worried about you. I need you to complete these forms. And I just lied on the forms. I just thought, no, I don't want anyone to know that I'm struggling because I don't want anyone to think that I'm failing at this. Like this is the thing I've always wanted to do. And I just want everyone to think I'm really good at it. But of course, that just made everything worse because I didn't really get the support I needed. And I think when you have ADHD, it's so hard to kind of keep, if I can swear, it's
Yeah, go.
so hard to keep your shit together
Yep.
when you haven't, when you've got ADHD, and then you put babies in the mix, which are unpredictable, and um, you don't. Every day was different, and I was just so desperate for some sort of semblance of routine and normality, and it just wasn't there, and I really really struggled with that. And I remember my first son was actually a really really good baby. We always joked if we'd had him second, well, if we'd had my youngest son first, we probably wouldn't have had any more children because it was so difficult. But I remember even with James, my eldest, I used to sort of stand at the bottom of the stairs at night to go to bed with a feeling of absolute dread and panic because I was so anxious about the night, and I was so anxious about when he would wake up and how long he'd be awake for. And yeah, I just really struggled with it. And I think the thing that was so difficult was that it was what I'd wanted, like, all my life.
Yeah.
And then when it happened, it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And it wasn't anything like I had imagined it was going to be. And that just sort of, compounded all these feelings of like anxiety and depression. And I know that if I could go back and do it all again, I'd do it very, very differently. I think the other thing was I've I've always been somebody that's compared myself to other people, and whether I was comparing myself to um, people on TV, like adverts and TV programs of like these, slim, beautiful mothers wearing, white clothes, and it was all perfect, or people that I was sort of meeting through NCT type classes, they all seem to be doing it so much better than me. And actually, my mum said something to me once that really made me kind of like, I thought, yeah, you're really right, mum. She said to me, Laura, when you see a young mum pushing a buggy in the day, you probably think, oh, that mum's got it all together. They've got themselves out for a walk and they're just going for a nice stroll. She said that mum might be walking that child around the block because that child has not stopped crying for the last 3 hours, and they're doing that out of desperation.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite quotes, again, I mentioned in the book, is comparison is the thief of joy. And I think if I could go back and do it again, I'd just stop comparing myself to everybody else. I'd just do it the way that I felt was right for us. I felt a lot of pressure to do it the right way. And I don't think you can put that on yourself, particularly when your children are really young.
And I feel quite strongly with, I didn't do NC2. I just did the kind of the normal kind of offer that they kind of
Yeah,
gave you. Um, and when I look back at that now, I think, they did a lot of stuff about, the birth, which never goes as it's meant to go. I don't see the point in
no,
my birth plans because actually you just get disappointed because it never goes that way.
exactly. Yeah.
They go off about, they go on about breastfeeding and then you
Oh,
get yourself into complete tears about that because you're not managing that either. And then you kind of go into this spiral of, again, I'm a rubbish mum and I'm failing and whatever. But what they don't ever, well, they didn't when I was having children. I don't know whether it's changed, but I suspect it hasn't, is that there isn't much in there or anything actually about just looking after you
no,
whilst you become a parent.
no.
And you're making this huge transition
It's huge.
into nothing you can even compare anything else to.
Yeah. I can remember coming home from the hospital when I had my first son, and I remember standing in the shower. He was like a couple of days old. I remember having a shower and just crying
Yeah,
and thinking my like my everything hurt, like every single part of my body hurt, and I felt disgusting. Like I just felt that my body is ruined. Everything in my body hurts. I felt like I've been in a car crash. And I thought, why is no one checking in on me? Like it was almost like I think it's almost like a trauma going through birth, like particularly the first time you go through it.
yeah,
And I remember like, all these people kept coming round to see the baby, and not one person sort of just taking me on side and going, "Are you all right?" Like that must, it was horrific. Um, but yeah, again, I think a lot of that is external pressure, isn't it? Whether it's from the
yeah,
media or other people. I don't think we do talk enough about um, how just unbelievably awful those first few weeks can be, really.
yeah,
And yeah, obviously having a child is something to celebrate, and 100%. But at the same time, I don't think there's enough checking in on parents, and not just mums, actually dads as well. I
mm,
think it puts mums and dads under huge pressure. The other thing that I remember doing as well is I became utterly obsessed with breastfeeding.
yeah,
Um, and I had a book, and I used to write down in the book left,
yeah,
book, and then how many minutes they'd fed for.
yeah.
And then the next time they'd fed, right, and then and I literally became like a slave to this book as well. And I can see now that what I was doing was my life felt very out of control, and I was clearly really struggling.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was my way of I'm controlling this situation, like, becoming very sort of obsessive about writing everything down.
Mm.
Um, and then, yeah, I mean, as I say, like I wouldn't, I love my children, and I never ever regret anything about becoming a parent, and having these two amazing boys. But it was so much harder than I imagined. And again, I remember my mum saying to me, I think she said that when she had me and my brother, I think they kept you in hospital for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, they
And
did,
my
they
mum
did.
was saying, like, I had my youngest son and came out the same day. I didn't even stay in overnight when I had him. And I remember my mum just being really like, I can't believe they've let you come home. Like, like when she was saying when we had babies, they used to take you off us take the babies away in the night, put you in a nursery so the mums would all get some sleep. They'd be there to help us with breastfeeding, bathing, changing everything. Just and I felt like I really needed that. I just felt like I needed someone to sort of wrap me up and go, we'll look after you. Baby's fine. We'll look after baby, and it just doesn't happen anymore,
No.
sadly.
And I think I feel quite strongly that that happens kind of, and that's been my experience when my son became really poorly. So my son's autistic, and I talk about him quite a lot. And he is on an EATOS package, so educated other than at school, because he wasn't able to access school. He just couldn't go in.
Mm,
And the big thing that kind of set me off in the direction that I work in now is because I had lots of people kind of giving me, this is what you need to do to help him. This is what all the things I needed to do, which I
mm,
knew, but nobody ever asked if I was okay. And I was
no.
falling apart behind the scenes, but of course, really good at masking. Everything's
Yeah,
fine. I'm holding it
same.
together. And I wasn't. And then that's what happened. I ended up in a massive burnout.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't his fault. It was
No, of
just
course.
the demands at that point. And it was very much lots of people giving me advice, and then they all went home. That was part of their job. They went home at night. I was left with him in the night thinking, can I keep him safe?
Mm,
And the pressure was ginormous. And I think that's
mm.
what's directed me to do the work that I do now
Yeah,
around with parents, is to support parents and basically be going, are you okay? Are
yeah.
you, because a lot of us aren't.
Aren't. And I think it's, I can really relate to that as well. So my youngest son was diagnosed with a very rare brain illness when he was
Yeah.
in, or just before his 11th birthday, and it was horrendous. And he was very, very poorly. He ended up having 3 rounds of neurosurgery. Was in and out of hospital for 2.5 years, and actually there were sometimes like some nurses or some consultants that would say, and how are you getting on? And I'd be like, this is awful.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, yeah, it really is, you really need to look after yourself. And that was really refreshing, but that was also the minority. And absolutely, when we were in hospital, the focus 100% had to be on Finn, 100% had to be on Finn. But and I'm sure lots of the parents listening know that when you have a child that's unwell or has additional needs, and you're constantly worried about them, you do put all of your energy into looking after them. But there's that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And I think particularly as women as well, and as mums, we are expected to just kind of keep absolutely everything together, and make sure that everyone's okay. And I know that often that's at the detriment of ourselves and our own mental health as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're so key, aren't we, to the whole thing staying together, that but there goes with it all that guilt and
Yeah,
um shame that you're not coping,
yeah,
and that you should be doing better, could be doing all that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Um and that's really, really hard in those moments, and we beat ourselves up a
yeah,
lot, I think, as parents.
yeah, we do. I think it's quite traumatizing as
Yeah.
well. So I had
Yeah.
as I say, my son had three neurosurgeries at St George's
Huge.
Hospital, and he's really well now. He still has his condition, but it's managed because he has a shunt. But what that means is that if he ever needs any kind of MRIs or anything, he has to go back to St George's because he's got a shunt, and they have to check the shunt afterwards. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we had to go back up to St George's, and he had to have an MRI. And as I say, he has to have it done at St George's because they have to check the shunt after, because the MRI can knock the shunt settings out. And we went upstairs and we walked past the theatres where I'd sat 3 times, or, sat there for 2, 3 hours while your child's having neurosurgery. Although, actually, I did write about this in the book. One of the times he was having neurosurgery, I went to Primark to distract myself. I just left the hospital and went shopping. But anyway, on this occasion, I walked past and I saw the theatres, and there were some people waiting outside these theatres, and I started crying, just literally like these tears. I just started crying, and Finn was like, "Mum, oh my God, like what are you doing? Like it's not that serious." And he thought I was crying about him having an
Yeah.
MRI. And yeah, it was obviously trauma, like literally just seeing this waiting area where I'd sat literally beside myself as a parent, waiting for him to come out of surgery, just triggered something in me. And I think often as well, as a parent, when you're going through a really difficult time, whether or not it's because your child is unwell or you're struggling to meet their needs, or whether they're really struggling in school and you're constantly having to fight schools, local authorities, to get what you want. I think it's very, very common as a parent to keep it together and then it will catch up with you when things have calmed down a little bit. It's like a delayed
Yeah,
trauma response.
absolutely. I think that exactly happened for me. That I think
Yeah.
the trauma of going through tribunal,
Yeah.
um, for us as a family was ginormous, kept it together.
Mm,
We then had an advocate that kind of carried us across the line because I was that by
mm,
that point was heading
yeah.
way down. And it wasn't
Mm,
until afterwards I hit rock bottom. But I think that's all that adrenaline, isn't it? All that cortisol that's kind
yeah.
of flying around in your body. You're in that fight, flight, freeze response. And it's not until some of that pressure comes off. And at those points, you're concerned at times for your child's life. That actually, as a parent, that's one of our most important things, isn't it? We have to keep them alive.
Yeah.
Um, and when you feel that's taken out of your hands, whether that's through operations or whether that's
Yeah.
through the local authority and barriers being put in place for you or being made very challenging, the trauma that goes with that is huge.
It's massive.
I
Yeah.
had to stop all work with tribunal work.
Yeah.
I don't do any reports or anything like that for tribunal anymore because of what it does to me.
Yeah.
And if I get a
Yeah.
message from the case officer, up it all comes back up again.
Yeah. And I was talking to a parent a while ago who said that if they see the Surrey County Council logo, that triggers their anxiety because they've had to fight. Sorry, but they've had to, and it's not just sorry, but they've had to fight
Yeah,
so hard to get their children. And you shouldn't have to fight. You should not have to fight to get your child what you need. It just feels it's so wrong and it's so utterly exhausting.
yeah,
And it we know, don't we, Liz, something really needs to change
yeah.
within our system so that parents don't have to keep going through this.
Absolutely, absolutely. I suppose
Mm,
I'm really interested, Laura, because we talked about kind of ADHD and some of the difficulties around that, and obviously not knowing that you were ADHD.
mm.
But what I loved in your book was you talked about what ADHD did bring. What did ADHD bring to you, for you as a parent and your kids?
Well, I think first of all, I think our house was full of fun. We were always going off on adventures and stuff as well. So I was a single parent from when my children were 3 and 6. And we would just, half-term holidays, we'd just jump in the car and go off on adventures and, you know, go down to the beach or, go and I was talking last night about when we stayed in an old hunting lodge near Lulworth Cove and we took the bikes and yeah, we just had a lot of fun. We were a very active family.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm very lucky that I live in a really lovely part of the world, which with lots and lots of countryside, and we always had animals and dogs, and yeah, lots and lots of outdoor stuff. And yeah, I mean, I've always been a very low demand parent as well. Like, and I think
yeah,
I was a low demand parent before I even knew that there was such a thing as low demand parenting. And that's caused some, issues with people saying I wasn't strict enough. And I remember one family member sort of sitting me down and actually saying to me, Laura, one of you, meaning myself or my ex-husband, one of you needs to get a grip of those boys. And I just remember being one really offended by that
yeah,
because actually the worst thing that you could do is attack my parenting. That would cause this like, how dare you criticize my parenting. But two, I remember feeling very, very confused by that because my kids were actually like pretty well behaved, like they weren't
mm,
like terrorists. They were just lively boys. Um, but yeah, no, I think, we would always do, I'm not the sort of person that can sit around doing nothing. So we were always doing stuff.
yeah,
Yeah. You know, so we they had a sort of active, busy um childhood.
yeah,
And I'd say lots of outdoors, horses, dogs, all sorts. So it was lovely.
yeah.
I miss it in lots of ways actually because they're grown up now.
I was going to say, because your boys are older now, aren't they?
Yeah, they're 19 and 22 now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So mine are 15 and 14. Yeah.
Mm.
And it's funny, isn't it, how it changes as well, I think. And like you said at the beginning, how you change your parenting changes as well, and the way I have
Yeah,
one is very different to the other.
yeah,
They
yeah,
need
absolutely.
different approaches from me.
Mm. Well, not last Wednesday, the Wednesday before, my eldest son, and I went up to London together so he could get a new tattoo, and it's like, and he afterwards he went, Mum really enjoyed today, and I was like, yeah, it's been really nice. So yeah, now I would say now my relationship with the boys is, we're just as close as we always were, but it's really changed. Like they are, they're all, I know people kind of object to this, but they are almost like my friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And um you know my eldest son in particular, is he actually works for me now as a learning
Does
support
he?
assistant. Quite, yeah, he's brilliant, he's so good. He didn't have the easiest time in school, he's ADHD.
Mm,
um and he particularly had a difficult time sort of when he finished school, like knowing what he wanted to do.
yeah.
And I was doing a PDA training course for professionals, and he wasn't doing anything. I said, "Look, do you just want to come along and just join in, see what you think?" And I could tell he was really nervous about it, but he was brilliant. Um, but he's very empathetic, James, and very caring, and he gives advice sometimes. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Um, and I make a point of once a month, just myself and the boys, the three of us just go out for dinner, just
Oh,
the three of us.
nice.
Yeah, without anyone else, without my husband, without their girlfriends, because I really, really, that, to be honest with you, they are my favorite people just to hang out with. Like
Yeah.
the three of us together, it's just a really, really nice dynamic. Um, so yeah, I'm very proud of them. And the other thing I'm very proud of as well is, particularly because I was a single parent, and they were, they were on, it was really just the three of us. And without disrespecting anybody, the relationship with my ex-husband was very tricky for a long time.
Mm.
But the other thing that I'm very, very proud of my boys is that they've both got long-term girlfriends, and the way that they treat them is amazing. Like, I'm so proud of them as young men, the way that they treat women and girls. Um, and we were actually talking about this the other day when we went out. We were talking about how your parenting influences your parenting.
Yeah.
And we were saying, we've all been parented by non-perfect parents, because there's no such thing as a perfect parent. And there's elements of the way that I was parented that I remember thinking as a child, I would never do that. And then as a parent, actively being, as I say, I was a very low demand parent, whereas my parents were quite strict with me.
Mm, mm.
And I remember thinking, I'm never gonna shout at my kids. I'm never gonna tell my kids like what to do, which obviously you do sometimes. But I think they've really taken, they obviously observed and were witness to things that were not okay in my relationship with my ex-husband. And they're not repeating those things. It's like they've kind of actively done differently, which I think is
And
amazing.
when you see that, Laura, do you find it easy to kind of then go to yourself, yeah, I've done all right. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like that, but I also would never take full credit for that. Like,
Okay.
I think there's their dad obviously has had input into their
Yeah,
into
yeah.
them as a parent, but um, I think they're very much their own people as well. And I think, yeah, I've had people say to me, your kids are a credit to you, which is a lovely thing to be told. But I just think they're good kids.
Yeah.
And they've both been through a lot as well with, James, as I say, diagnosed with ADHD at 12. He also now, and I agree with him, self-identifies as autistic.
Okay. Wow.
And I think with James, I think when he was in school, the ADHD was so much more
Yeah.
noticeable. And now he's not in school, and he's got a lot more autonomy in his life. And I think the autism is becoming much more obvious.
Yeah.
Um, and then obviously Finn's been through an awful lot with his health as well. So I'm really proud of how they've both sort of overcome all of that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. The other thing that I was going to talk to you about was RSD, because I know that features in your book. I've heard you talk about it and seen you talk about it on social media and stuff like that. And it really interests me this because although I don't have a diagnosis of ADHD, RSD, when I read about it, really hits home for me, like really hard.
Yeah.
Um,
So
Tell us
yeah,
a
I
bit
mean,
about what it is. What is it?
yeah,
So
so
people kind of know what we're talking about.
yeah, rejection sensitive dysphoria, or rejection sensitivity dysphoria, some people call it. Um, it's estimated that 98% of people who have ADHD also experience RSD. Obviously, you can experience it and not be ADHD as well, but
Yeah.
I think if you've got ADHD, you're going to have it. And it's basically um, the easiest way to describe it is you constantly think you're in trouble. You constantly think you've done something wrong. Um, highly sensitive to criticism, highly sensitive to anything kind of like negative, like in terms of feedback. Your brain constantly goes down like a negative route. So, for example, um, I do. I try so hard not to, but I still do it all the time. If I text a friend and they don't text me straight back, I think, or if I see that they've read the message and they don't reply, oh my God, I've done something wrong. I've said the wrong thing. I've done something to upset them. They've found out something about me, um, which is horrible. And before, what I can see now is before I understood that I was ADHD, before I understood about RSD, that would make me incredibly kind of like needy
Yeah.
in relationships. So, for example, when I was younger, if I liked a boy and we didn't have text messages then, but if I phoned them and they didn't phone me back, I'd phone them again. And then if they didn't phone back, I'd phone them again. And then I can imagine them kind of getting home and like the parents saying, "Oh, that girl Laura's like phoned you like 6 times tonight." Um, and the other thing is as well, I did my NPQH, which is like a headship award years ago,
Mm.
and I had a really good mentor. And I remember this mentor saying to me, "Laura, you could have." There were 60 parents at my school. I said, he said you could have 60 parents come to like a parents' evening. 59 of them would tell you that you were fantastic and the school was brilliant and they were really, really happy. And one parent would tell you that they weren't like happy. And he said, you will fixate on that one parent that isn't happy. And he was absolutely right. Like I would always focus on that. So it's horrible, and I think I link it in the book to the fact that there was a study by a psychologist. I think it's Williamson. I should know this off by heart because I keep quoting him. He did a study where he estimated that by the age of 12, children with ADHD will have received 20,000 more negative comments than their neurotypical peers.
That's huge.
It's massive. And then I say in the book, imagine how many it is by 16 and
Yeah.
18 and 20. And a lot of that is because we're ADHD. I was always getting into trouble at school for not listening, not concentrating, forgetting my homework, not having my equipment. And I wasn't doing any of those things because I was naughty. I was behaving that way because I was ADHD. But when you're constantly getting into trouble, I guess it's a type of trauma
Mm.
again, that you kind of expecting to be in trouble. um but it has made me horribly anxious over the years. Like, it's really really impacted on me. um but now I understand it better. I still experience RSD, but I can label it and I can say, no, Laura, that person's not upset with you. They haven't called you back because they're probably busy, or because they're forgetful, or because whatever. So I sort of, the expression I use in the book is I take the thought to court, and I kind of like try and find a little bit more evidence around why I'm having that really negative thought. And often there isn't any evidence to like back up what my stupid brain is telling me sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's really debilitating sometimes. It's horrible, really
And
horrible.
and that's really hard, I suppose, as well for, as we become parents, and
Yeah,
there is that general comparison anyway.
yeah,
That also there's parents that, like yourself, that get that diagnosis later in life. They might have
mm,
never even heard of RSD,
no,
that they're kind of muddling along as best they can with these horrible, crippling anxiety feelings and
Mm,
comparison to other people, and like you say, feeling like they're in trouble all the time and they've done something wrong.
mm,
And that's exhausting. And that leads to burnout,
mm.
having to
It
live in
does.
that way.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is as well, for me, it certainly stopped me advocating as hard as I should have done for my children sometimes, because I was like, oh, I don't want to upset anybody, and I
Yeah.
don't want the parent, I don't want the teacher to be upset with me, and I don't want the teacher to be talking about me in the in the staff room and being labelled. And actually, I was talking to some parents the other day, and they said that they were really worried about being labelled as that parent. I said, I totally get it because I used to be the same, but please don't think like that. You know, you have to become that parent sometimes, and also your children are going to be in your life for your whole life. Your child's teacher is going to be in your life for maybe 10 months, so it doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, it has stopped me advocating for my children at times.
It's really
Um,
interesting that you say that because I think I had something similar and I still get it at times when, I look back to, my son becoming quite poorly and thinking, why didn't I say more? And I
yeah,
remember the time thinking, even with the job that I do, and I've been in meetings and
yeah,
meetings, but I felt that I was going to be in trouble. I was going to be
yeah,
that parent.
yeah.
And then afterwards, beating myself up for weeks and months and probably still a bit down the line that I
Mm,
should have done more. I should have said
mm.
more. I should have been more vocal. I should have been more difficult. Um, but also I find it quite difficult that I find it quite difficult to get cross and be angry. It makes me feel really unwell
I
eventually.
hate
Yeah,
confrontation.
me too.
Absolutely hate. I'm
I'll
so
avoid it like the
conflict avoidant.
plague.
Same.
Yeah. And I think I
Yeah.
had I had a lady say to me eventually, because everyone kept saying, you're going to have to get angry. You're going to have to start arguing and fighting for this. And I was thinking, if I have to do that, I'm not going to survive this. I cannot
Mm.
be like that. And I had somebody say to me, you've got to learn to be pleasantly persistent. And that's
Yeah.
really helped me that I am persistent,
Mm.
but I'm pleasant about it, but I'm just
Yeah.
going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I've managed it. But I still have those days when I go back and think, why did I just let that happen? I just let that happen and I feel
Mm.
awful.
Yeah. It does make you feel awful. I mean, in the book, actually, in the ADHD book, I do include some assertiveness, like little templates, because I find those can be really, really helpful. I think the other thing that I found as well is that when I have stood up for myself or stood up for my children, when I, like you don't have to be unpleasant. You just
No.
have to, I would say, stick to facts, not opinions as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Um, but it always feels amazing. You're like, I can be assertive, and I just think, but I do think it's really, really hard. And I think, as a neurodivergent parent, as of neurodivergent children, like any kind of social communication at times is going to be difficult, whether it's a face-to-face meeting or um, emailing and yeah, and I don't know if you do the same, Liz, but I would sort of scrutinize emails and I couldn't just read things at face value, be like, oh, is their tone like a bit,
I
are
have
they
to
a
get
bit
other
rude?
people to read emails for me,
Yeah,
Laura, because I will immediately go to, they're having a go at me. They're being
yeah.
horrible. And then someone else will read it and they'll go, they don't mean that at all, Liz. That's not what they mean in. You've
No. And
totally
I think
read
with
that.
particularly with written communication,
Yeah.
you can really misconstrue it sometimes, can't you? You can read into things that actually that's not what people mean.
Yeah,
But
hugely.
it is like you say, it's hard and it's really, really, really exhausting. I
Yeah.
think I think that RSD actually, um, I've written about RSD in my teens guide to PDA because I really it's not talked about enough as part of like neurodiversity kind of like assessments and diagnosis. Um, and I really think it's really, really helpful for young people to understand it as well. So there was a young person with PDA that I was working with a while ago, really nice young person. But she was talking to me. There was lots and lots of sort of challenges with her friendships and relationships and everything. And I said to her, "Have you ever heard of RSD?" And she actually said, "Oh God, are you going to label me with something else?"
Yeah.
And I said, "No, no, no." I said, "But I think it'd be really helpful for us to look at it together." And we did. And I remember her saying, "Oh my God, like this makes so much sense now. Like, why has no one said it before?" But I also think it's really, really important for professionals to be aware of RSD as well, because
Yeah.
if you're and for parents as well, if you're giving feedback to a child or criticizing a child or telling a child off, it can be absolutely crushing to get that negative feedback. So we have to sort of understand that, you know, neurodivergent children are going to be highly sensitive to that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Laura, if I said to you, in your parenting experience so far, because we
Mm.
never stop being one, do we?
No.
And even when they get big and grown up, we still end up, we're still a parent. What's probably been your best bit? What's been your best bit about being a parent?
Well, I think, like I said, I think it's the end. I mean, there isn't an end result yet because we're still, but I think it's the fact that I've just got such a good relationship with my
Yeah.
boys, and the fact that, they want to spend time with me. Like I don't force them to spend time with me. We just genuinely really enjoy each other's companies. I've always said my favorite sound is the sound of my boys laughing. And I remember, like, when they were little, like if I was downstairs and they were playing upstairs, when I used to hear that like real giggling, it usually meant they were up to something they
Yeah.
shouldn't have been. I love that sound of them like really, really giggling. And now, because they've got a good relationship as well, my boys, they spend time together. And I sometimes hear them on the phone sort of laughing. And yeah, I think just those sort of just those happy times that we had together. And
I think that's one
you
of my
know
favourites, them laughing, the kids. And that
yeah,
real belly laugh that you
when
can
they're
hear.
proper laughing,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
I love
they've
that.
lost it upstairs, or as you said, wherever they
Yeah,
are, they're just
yeah,
laughing.
yeah,
Those are some of the best moments. The
yeah.
best
And I
moments.
like the fact that like my boys like really take the mickey out of each other as well, but it's like in a really good humored way.
Yeah, yeah.
um yeah, so yeah, I think my probably a memory that really sticks in my mind of what an unbelievably kind boy my eldest was when my youngest son wasn't very well. Unfortunately, there was a Christmas day when he got rushed into hospital, and I had promised him that we would have a nice Christmas because he'd had such a horrible sort of November, December. He'd been very, very unwell. And unfortunately, on Christmas Day, it was very apparent that he really wasn't very well. So I had to take him up to St George's, and we were actually in hospital for about 4 nights, and it was awful because with Christmas as well, you have all these expectations. And James came to visit Finn in hospital and didn't say anything about what he was planning. And when we got home, James had been out with the Christmas money that he had got for Christmas, and he bought Finn another load of presents, wrapped them all up so that when Finn came in the house, he basically, James was like, I wanted you to have another Christmas day. And I just remembered, I get emotional thinking about it. I just remember
Yeah.
Finn just going over to James and just hugging him and just crying, and just it was just so beautiful. And I just thought, wow, like I didn't suggest that James did that. He did it completely on his own. And at the time he would have been about 15 or 16.
Wow.
So yeah, he did it all while I was in hospital with Finn.
Yeah.
He just took himself off and did all that.
Oh,
So
that's a nice one. That's made me feel a bit emotional as well, Laura,
yeah,
you
it's just really
described that.
sweet. Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really sweet. Like, just a really beautiful thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. If
Mm.
if there's a parent listening today and they're listening to this podcast, is there a bit of advice that you would give someone? What would be your kind of top tips? Always really hard, but just kind of what would be your advice? There might be a parent that maybe are crewing with their ADHD, or whether some of the kind
I
of
think
thoughts and feelings they're getting is RSD, or
I think there's two things really. I think first of all, stop comparing yourself to other people. Like whatever you're going through. And again, thinking back to when Finn wasn't very well, I joined this Facebook group for parents whose children had his condition. And I realized it was actually really unhealthy for me to be in this group because there were some children who were really, really poorly. And that frightened me
yeah,
because I thought, oh my God, is that the route that we're going to go down? And then there were some parents whose children were nowhere near as poorly as Finn. And then I thought, I don't know why you're saying like you've got it easy kind of thing. So actually, I think comparing yourself to others, whether it's your friends, your family, people you're seeing on TV, whatever, is generally pretty unhealthy. Just do what you really in your gut you know is right for your children. And I think the other thing that I would say is you are always doing your best, but your best will change. And there'll be some days when your best is literally getting out of bed and throwing a pot noodle at your children because that's all you can muster
Yeah.
and you can't even get in the shower. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, then there'll be days when you know you can get it together and you're in the kitchen baking with them and making like really amazing healthy food, and that's okay too. Like you're just always doing your best, and
Yeah.
your best is going to change.
Amazing. Thanks, Laura. I think all it leaves me to
Pleasure.
say is thank you ever so much for coming on. I will put all Laura's details in the show notes about your books and about all the things that you do because there's so much I probably can't list it here all now. We listed that at the
Thank
beginning.
you.
But I'll put all those links in there so that people can find you if they want to find you. But thank you ever so much. Thanks for coming on and talking about
My pleasure.
ADHD and RSD. And I say I've thoroughly enjoyed dipping into the book and hopefully going to get into more of it, which for me as a dyslexic person is really great to find a book that I
Yeah,
go,
no, I'm
oh, I
very
can
pleased
read
that you're
this.
moving it. Yeah, thank you, Liz.
But thanks ever so much.